welcome to our Chapter 4 edition of the ACSM Health and Fitness Facility Standards and Guidelines book for our sports administration class. So yeah, we'll dive into really what's the difference today between what is staff, what is contractors, how does that get paid, what does it look like in the grand scheme of an overall facility, based on each type. So might as well dive right in here and just understand that when it comes to facilities and what the makeup is of their, what their profits are, 40% of those profits end up going to things like wages, salaries, and benefits. Now, not all staffing gets benefits, but wages, salaries, that. So you're saying that there's a lot or more. So it's 40% or more. All right. Depending upon the facility, you're either going to be an employee or an independent contractor. Okay, we'll talk about the differences of that. But like it says right here, they can have a direct or indirect effect on how your facility operates. Even if you're an independent contractor, you still may have some ability to really still inflict some harm or really some good. Obviously we want to have both sides, but we want to have less harm than good. But that's what we're saying, is that even if you're not directly employed by the facility as aka an employee, you can still have that direct effect. But you could also turn it around and make it worse. So there's always that catch-22. The most critical are those who give guidance, those who are personal and group instructors, those who provide supervision, and typically they all have a certain job specific title that they have, and is that really employment or independent contracting? Again, it depends on the facility. Now, when it comes to staffing, we want to make sure that we have a combination of education, training, certification, hands-on experience. Are they qualified? Because being certified and qualified doesn't always mean that it's the best person for you. Okay. So medical and healthcare professionals can also be involved in this. PTs, physical therapists, chiropractors, physicians, all of them can have a very big role in your facility. Now, again, depending upon what type of facility it is. So what do we say? Those who have a supervisory responsibility or oversight on things like physical activity, exercise programming, and those who administer them at a professional education, educational purpose, a work experience, or certification, that's going to be what they're going to need. If you're supervisory, you need to have a higher standard of education and, really supervisory background. If not that, then a lot of experience. So it just depends on who's hiring, what they're looking for. But in this case, what they're saying is that supervisory roles, fitness directors, group exercise directors, aquatic directors, program directors, it just depends. Like a YMCA will have an aquatics director. For those of you who know LA Fitness, they're basically going into that aquatics division, and that's what they require, because they have a pool there. But YMCAs do, LA Fitnesses do, etc. Standard number 2, counseling, instructing, and then supervising a physical activity at a facility need to have, again, professional education, work experience, and or certifications. Some of this information is a little bit outdated. Like it says here, December 10th, 8 states had legislation to move toward being registered or licensed as a personal trainer. Off the top of my head, I am not sure of how many, but I know in my head right now, I believe that, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think any states require a licensure. It's a certification only, but it says California passed it through their Senate, but I don't know how far that got. So there might have to be a little bit more research on our parts to see where that is. So it depends on where you live. All right. But if you are a fitness instructor, a group exercise instructor, a lifestyle coordinator, a personal trainer, just be understanding that the guidelines are changing, all the time. So you might go one time to go to this facility and they might say, oh, we just want, high school education and a personal training certification. The next time you go back, 6 months later, because maybe you're like, I don't want to work there, their requirements may have bumped up to a bachelor's degree and 1 to 2 years experience, or that you're with that bachelor's degree, you've had some sort of an internship. So you can see where things are always going to be ever changing. But what are we saying here? We want the best possible people who are going to provide our people with the best, to get them to the best results they can, no matter who they are and what their performance level is. Standard 3, basically this is going to work around AED and CPR, aka BLS certification. And like it says here, if you are a person who is engaged in pre-activity screenings or prescribing, instructing, monitoring, or supervising exercise, physical activity programs, you need to make sure that you're AED CPR certified. Well, there really is no ifs, ands, or buts about it, because you have to provide your certification to whichever organization you're getting your training certification from. So if you get NASM, for example, ACSM, for example, you are required to submit that you are trained in CPR, BLS, which also now includes AED, unless there's a separate AED certification they want to see, okay, or more depending upon what position you hold. So you have to provide that documentation. Now, the thing is, and this is what I was saying before, if you are certified, that means that you hold the proper requirements. But qualified means, are you really able to go out and do the job that's put out for you? So just because you're certified doesn't mean you're qualified. But if you're qualified, more times than not, you are certified. Now, understand that in the world of personal training, for example, we have people who have been personal training for a long, long time that may not be, what is now deemed qualified, but their experience makes up for that. They're on the job training and the seminars and the extra certifications they get, seminars, workshops they might go to. All those make a difference in getting them to be where they are today. But you have to go by when you came in is really what it comes down to. If you came in 15 years ago, well, the requirements were different then. Requirements are a lot changed now, and they really are looking for people with more education to back that up. All right. So for those of you in sports admin, you want to make sure you look at the LA Fitness case in your week 2 to kind of go off of why AED, first aid, CPR is really important for us. So guidelines, making sure that you consider having adaptive, appropriate levels of a professional education or certification to assess, prescribe physical activity for those with special needs. We call that adaptive training. All right. Blindness, lack of mobility, limb loss, COPD, heart disease, cancer, cerebral palsy, muscular dystrophy. All of those things make a difference. So what we are talking about here is adaptive, but also special populations. Okay. So, you might be required, depending upon the facility you work at, to either go farther in your certifications or education so that you can be part of this higher level. All right. It's going to require more, and there's going to be more requirements, more education, more certification. All right. It's going to be very important for that. Making sure that everybody, who is training is CPR, first aid, BLS, AED certified. Okay. But we talked about it in the previous chapter, making sure at least one person on duty is trained in those regards. All right. But we want to provide all the opportunity for all the staff. All right. And like it says here, greater likelihood that operators will be able to respond to an emergency in a timely manner, and everybody can work in unison. Also, we want to make sure criminal background checks are done for employees and independent contractors. Remember, your employees are those who are getting a paycheck directly from your business. Independent contractors are those who are going to get what's called a 1099, which means that they have to self-impose their taxes. So a facility will pay you, and typically they don't take the taxes out, they pay you, and then your job is to make sure you take care of that correctly. All right. So criminal background checks, especially for those, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Those people who are working with youth, it is the facility's responsibility to make sure a criminal background check is done. We cannot take that risk. There's so much liability that goes into it. So, again, with that, we don't want to provide a threat to our members or, especially children. But, we don't want to have that background come back and realize that, an individual has a really suspect background that may cause harm to others unbeknownst to, anybody. So we have to be aware that, if a facility is asking for a criminal background check, it's highly appropriate. It's plenty legal, and it should be done. And particularly, especially if you're working with youth. All right. So I'm just going to kind of leave this up here. I'm not going to go through the whole chart here, but look at your professional education, look at your professional certifications, and look at your professional experience. These are all director based. These are for supervisory positions. So aquatics is going to be very different than fitness. Fitness is going to be maybe very similar to group exercise programming. And then a program director might be a little bit more broad. So their requirements might be a little bit different, but still very similar. It's your aquatics that's really going to take you to a different level because of the fact that you're going to be now working with water hazard than anything else. So I'll leave this up here for a couple of seconds so you can see it, and then pause it if need to see what those requirements are. Now, again, always changing, but this is the most current that we have that ACSM is providing us. Now, this is what we were talking about in terms of the professional positions of, like it says, instructors, health and wellness coaches, and personal trainers. They will all have something slightly different. Health and wellness coaches might be a little bit more involved. It says right here, minimum 2-year associate's degree. I know that a lot of health and wellness coaches positions are going to that route of a bachelor's degree, and they, besides a personal training certification, they really want you to become a wellness coach. So I believe it's a CWC, a certified wellness coach. So, you have to be aware that, these requirements are very different, as is a exercise physiologist. You may be hired on as an exercise physiologist. Beknownst to you, you might actually be doing personal training roles, or you might be a personal trainer who's doing exercise physiology roles. So there needs to be a differentiation between that, especially when it comes to a personal trainer. Is, the requirement isn't a 4-year degree. Exercise physiologist, you need to have a 4-year degree plus have your EPC, or your certified exercise physiologist certification. That comes from the ACSM. So, other jobs might say they're hiring for an exercise physiologist, but it ultimately might really be just a personal training position. So the requirements might be different. They just want to make it a different title. So see how it becomes interchangeable and the lines become blurred. We have to pay attention to that. Okay, but understanding your roles, exercise physiology, you're going to probably be working with more at-risk individuals because of the requirements that are needed for the job. Now, if you're ever wondering about certifications, again, I'll leave this up here. These are some of the major ones that, are out there. These are the ones that are NCCA accredited. These are all the options on the right. If you need to, make sure that you look up those, CPT certified personal trainer, EP exercise physiologist, GFI group fitness instructor, health coach, medical. That is I always forget what the MES is, but I'll come back to that for a second. I always forget what that medical something or other, but I'll come back. GFI, we talked about. PES is performance enhancement specialist. CES, corrective exercise specialist. And then CNC, certified nutrition coach. That's a fairly newer certification. And then CEU's continuing education. And moving down, CSCS, that would be your certified strength and conditioning specialist. TSCF is a tactical. It's actually TSC. So it's a tactical strength and conditioning specialist, which it should be the TSCS. And then MES is a medical exercise specialist. Those are more clinical based. All right, going back to ACE. So these are all the options that you have in terms of what's out there, that are available to you, and they're major certifications. But understand they're all going to have different requirements that are needed for that position. So understand that some of them may not be a high school only. They may be a 4-year degree. EP, EPC, MES, CSCS, TSCS, or TSCF. I believe those are the ones that I'm looking at right now that are required, that you must show proof of bachelor degree. All right. Then, like I said, there's other requirements for other components, but that's what we're looking at right now. So a little bit deeper into this for special populations, clinical exercise physiologists, medical exercise specialists, cardiac rehab. All right. All of these are specified to the special population that they're working under. NASM has a corrective exercise specialist. ACSM has some more inclusive training that is out there. So depending upon your population, you may be required to go on beyond just your general training cert. Okay. ACSM in conjunction with the American Cancer Society, they do have a cancer exercise trainer credentialing that they have. And that really does help, because working with people with cancer, because they want to remain active, there's different requirements, and we want to see that. All right. So as we could tell, whether you're an independent contractor who is who's basically contracted out by the gym, or if you're an employee who is paid directly by the gym, then it doesn't really matter. You still have to have these certifications, these requirements, the requirements of the education, and then obviously any other qualifications like BLS, CPR, first aid, AED. Okay, so don't take this lightly. Make sure you know where in your career path where you're going and what you're going to need, and understand that where you're going may have different requirements when you get there versus what's out there right now. So always keep that in mind. Have any questions, reach out. Always available to answer them. You all have a really great day. Thanks for listening to Chapter 4.